So let me get to something we talked about yesterday, which was that speech that Mark Carney gave at the Economic Club in New York. And I said that great line for people who missed it, by the way. Here's the line that's drawn all the attention and continues to.
At a time of a global energy crisis, Canada provides the United States with reliable power, with critical minerals that help fuel American growth. That is mutual strength. Let's be absolutely clear. Canada Strong will help make America great again.
So I think you and I talked about this. I thought it was a great line. You kind of agreed, but today we're hearing fallout from some people who think, no, that was something he should not have said. It signals a new change. What's going on here? Why are people losing their minds over this?
I don't know why you're saying I kind of agreed.
Okay. You did agree.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
I thought, no, but I really thought it was a great line. Look, let's think about this. Strategically speaking, who was he talking to? He was talking to Wall Street. And if there is one group of people, one sector, anywhere in the world that Donald Trump listens to, it's Wall Street. It's the market. And, we're talking about guys, that hang out with Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and with Commerce Secretary, the very lovable Howard Lutnick. And so by making the case to Wall Street that, guys, and he knows what's going on also with the U.S. economy. It's not like the U.S. economy is booming. It's not like the MAGA movement also, politically speaking, is doing well. I mean, Donald Trump is at the lowest he's ever been in the polls. And so going into the midterms, there is definitely something to be said about making the case to the people that really matter to Donald Trump, which are basically the captains of industry and high finance, that working with Canada is in everybody's advantage. The second level of his speech, which is also very important, is that, well, we're struggling economically. We got the numbers today. We're technically in a recession. We know this. We've known this for months, ever since the tariff war began. Our economy is stalled because of this. But the fact is that with all these programs and these investments, you talk about defense, housing, training, everything that Mark Carney has announced over the last few months, the fact is that he's also trying to attract investment, and that also is about attracting U.S. investment. And why not? There's going to be a lot of money to be made with all these government programs in different sectors, energy being one of them as well. So why not go to the finance sector of not only the U.S. of the world and say, okay, Canada is back, is open for business, it's back, and we're ready to work with you in finding a solution. So I thought it was a great strategic move. It makes sense, and at the same time, you can be tough, like since the Davos speech, and have a very strong rhetoric that says we are going to keep our elbows up and we're going to find other markets to trade with if the U.S. doesn't want to trade with us. But at the same time, you would say, look, let's find a way to work together because it's in your interest and it's our interest as well.
So why do you, as I said, which brings me back to the original question, David, which is why are some people looking at this and trying to, make it as if he said something terrible here?
Well, there is, I think there is a current, and when you read everything, ever since, the trade war has begun with the U.S., there is a current that says you should, speak very softly and not carry a big stick with Donald Trump. That you should, flatter him and try to find a way to deal with him. But the fact is that Canada cannot do this. We can't give away our aluminum sector. We can't give away our automobile sector. We can't give away supply management for our dairy. We cannot give away softwood lumber. It is just impossible for Canada. No prime minister from any party could do this. So we have to find a different way to find a path with the U.S., obviously, but also what we found out in the last year is that we are too dependent on the U.S., and that's why our economy is hurting maybe more than others because of Donald Trump's trade war. So that's why we do need to open up maybe a bit more with China, albeit with all the caveats you mentioned in your previous interview. But we have maybe to do a bit more with China. We definitely have to do more with Europe. We definitely have to do more in the Pacific Rim because we can do it. And we have to invest more here in our own country in different sectors. Again, aluminum, energy, and housing and defense. But I think there's a current that people that are also, let's face it, that some of these people are not fans of Mark Carney or the Liberals either that are saying that.
All right, let me move on and talk about this. I was not aware of this story, at least the developing part of it. PSPP, Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon, about to unveil another chapter of their Blue Book. This time on how the province plans on consulting with First Nations. And obviously when we talk First Nations, this has been sort of, if you will, the problem, not just here, but with Alberta, the idea that they just go ahead and do this without consulting. What happened here? What changed?
Well, here's the thing. So I just got to say, we would talk a lot about, how bad Kiss and Fréchette's week was, and it was bad, no doubt about it. But Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon had a horrible week. First, it began, over the last weekend and the beginning of the week with a group called We Québec, which is an umbrella organization with that represents like about 50 separatist groups in Quebec. That it came out with a vast report, very well researched, and with polling and policy questions. Really, an in-depth study of what's right, what's going well with the movement, what's not going well with the separatist movement, and what it came up with is one of the major problems with the brand itself, the sovereignist brand, is that it is not opened to others. It's not open to new Quebecers. It is closed off. And so Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon, with his right-wing turn over the last few years and, being perceived as being wildly anti-immigration, he's had to answer to that. So that's one thing. And that didn't give, a good image to the Parti Québécois and to Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon. And now it was scheduled. So for several months now, Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon has been rolling out chapters of what he calls his Blue Book, which is supposed to be the road to independence, right? There are different chapters. There was a chapter on the economy. And for weeks now, it had been announced that yesterday, Thursday, the chapter on relations between an independent Quebec and First Nations would be released. And this was on a schedule. This is the whole strategy. Like every other month or so, we roll out between, up until the election, these chapters, and, the strategy being trying to build momentum towards the election and then eventually a referendum. And so first major impact of what's going on in Alberta and the court decision in Alberta a few weeks ago, where a Superior Court judge basically said, hold on a second, there's Section 35 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and the Supreme Court has said that section about Aboriginal rights, saying, you have to consult First Nations on anything that would impact them. And obviously, Alberta secession would impact First Nations. And so what happened is that here, the Quebec Assembly of First Nations, when it found out that the PQ was going to release this report yesterday, this chapter yesterday on First Nations relationships with an independent Quebec, the Assembly of First Nations of Quebec said, hold on, we never were consulted. Right. We never talked to anybody at the PQ about this. It'd be nice to maybe we have a conversation, a little sit down, because we have a relationship with the federal government. We have treaties with the federal government. We have a law that governs us, an imperfect one at that, but still and so you can't just say, okay, we're independent and tell us, well, that's how it's going to play. And Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon has had to back down and say, you know what, we're going to postpone the release of this chapter, and we're going to start a conversation with the Assembly of First Nations of Quebec. And so that's the situation. But it's another slap in the face of Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon, because very quickly on this, to end, Aaron, is that here's another week where Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon is not talking about the issues that are priorities for Quebecers. And again, this is going to hurt him, again, very much so politically. And while Charles Milliard and Christine Fréchette have had, let's face it, not stellar weeks again this week, they still have an opening. And no wonder Quebecers are so divided, and nobody is really fascinated with their choices for premier right now, as the polling suggests.
That's a great way to describe it, right? Nobody is. It's
nobody.
It's turned from wow, Christine Fréchette to Christine Fréchette.
Exactly. And so, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and that's where we are now. It's amazing when you think back only a few weeks how the ground has shifted here. As far as, political parties, who's in the lead, who's not. Forget about the polls. Just look what's going on in the news cycle every day, and no one's able to really get a foothold.
Well, no, but everybody, all five parties are tripping on their own words, on their own declarations. I mean, a week ago, from Quebec Solidaire to Éric Duhem, we spoke about Éric Duhem again. Charles Milliard is nowhere on the key issues. Christine Fréchette has clearly lost her momentum this week. I thought, on Monday, I liked it. I liked the idea that she was sending checks. By the way, mea culpa, back on Monday. She is sending checks. I thought she wasn't. I misunderstood. So she's sending checks. She's reducing the provincial sales tax on food. I thought, there's something there. I thought at least she's talking about key issues, but the way she's performed this week on the, very reasonable questions, the impact on budget and, what's going to happen and is it really going to have an impact? She wasn't really prepared. She struggled with André Fortin on the question of what the Quebec's debt is. But you look at the polling, all of the major leaders. So, Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon, Christine Fréchette, and Charles Milliard, when you ask Quebecers who would make the best premier, they perform less well than their party. And right now, the last polling, so you have Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon, best premier, 22%. That means 78% of Quebecers would like somebody else as premier, think somebody else. And then you go down. Christine Fréchette, 20%. Charles Milliard, 17%. That is, nobody right now is really connecting with Quebecers, and it leaves it wide open. And that's why it's so important in the coming weeks, just before Saint Jean-Baptiste, who is going to be able to give a lasting positive image before the summer break. So when they come back in August, there's going to have somewhat the beginnings of a momentum. But I got to say, right now, it's wide open. Wide open. It could go a lot of directions. You're going to have that, that block of voters for the PQ. But then who is going to be the answer, the anti-PQ, the anybody but PQ? That's wide open.
David Heurtel. David, again, thanks so much for filling in for Jimeni. We will talk to you in your regular time slot again next week, and you have a great weekend. Thanks.
You too, my friend.
Unmistakably Canadian.
It's the music that raised you.
The artists raising the bar.
Hi, this is Bryan Adams.
Hey, my name's Brett Emmons. I'm from the Glorious Sons.
Hi, I'm Nelly Furtado.
Made in Canada. The station that champions Canadian music.
Loud, proud, and all yours.
No passports required. Just press play.
Tap into Made in Canada now on iHeartRadio.ca
or the free iHeartRadio app.